Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and More Wilds. Today it's time to talk about Title Update 2 and that big topic of performance. We got a lot to talk about and look at today, so let's just get into the first concept. Overwhelmingly negative. That's the current state of the reviews for the game on Steam. This remains the case after the title update, but to be fair, it refreshes every 30 days, that overall last 30-day sort of feedback. So we've got a ways to go before we see that change, even if it's positive or negative or whatever it is. Why is it in such a dire state right now? Well, if we jump back not that long ago to a video I made recently, it all began with the May update. At least that's when the big review bomb stuff began. Before that, there was actually a trend of negative response to the game. There were more negative reviews for the game than positive in the months leading up to the big review bomb at May. Performance has been a major point of concern and aggravation for this game. I think a lot of us can agree that whether you like this game or not, the performance has been pretty bad. If you have a really good rig like myself, then you've been fine. But you can still have empathy for those that obviously have less expensive rigs. It does seem like there's been a bit of an overreaction and dramatization of it all, because my girlfriend on a much older rig has been able to run the game on much lower graphic settings, to be fair, has been able to run it fine. But none of that was true anymore with the May update, which, as they explained it, basically caused an issue where your shaders were being compiled while you're playing the game, which is something that's meant to happen once when you load up the game, and then that's it. I experienced this myself, and no one should have been able to avoid that, to be honest, because conceptually, that shouldn't happen. A friend of mine put it really well, where in his experience, on his better rig than mine, by the way, every time he would start a hunt, it was like 2 to 3 minutes of just unbearably bad FPS. That should never happen on a ultra expensive rig that is well beyond the requirements to run the game. So they introduced something that absolutely devastated the experience for the player, and basically no one could dodge that. They quickly put out this response, a little guide on what to do depending on, the graphics card you have, but a lot of people were never going to see that. A lot of people were never going to want to do that. The solution should have been a very quick response from the dev team, a little patch that goes, hey, we made this big mistake, here's a quick update and patch that resolves it, just get that installed and you're good. Ideally, that should have happened just days after the May patch launched and the issue became obvious. What happened instead is we waited weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks until Title Update 2, where they finally did it. They introduced the patch that resolved that issue and acknowledged it. So that period between the May update and Title Update 2, in my opinion, was an unplayable state, which is obviously unacceptable. And so what are you going to do? You're going to stop playing the game and you're going to leave a negative review. That's basically all you can do. And with Steam reviews being basically thumbs up or thumbs down, there's no in between, a lot of the reviews I read from reasonable people were basically like, the performance has dropped, it's unacceptable, I love the game, but I'm not playing it like this. And that is fair. And with that issue, I think it's reasonable that a lot of people would stop playing the game while it runs like that, which is awful. Maybe leave a negative review to let them know it's unacceptable. I don't really understand why it took us this long wait to Title Update 2 before we finally get that fix in the form of a patch. And I would argue that it should have been a top priority to get out as soon as physically possible, separate from any other patch. But we had to wait until Title Update 2. And so the review bombing continued and continued. And in that way, I think that's fair. So yeah, pretty weird situation. Let's now talk about my experience with Title Update 2 in terms of performance. I complained that since the dawn of time for Wilds for me, I can't open this game without taking ages. In Title Update 2, that has finally changed. The game loads up in 20 seconds or less. Whereas before Title Update 2, since the launch of the game, it would take minutes and minutes and minutes. Up to 10, that's finally gone. So God am I glad for that. In my experience, my FPS issues are completely gone. It's been smooth as butter. It's been a massive change in my experience for the performance. So I'm thrilled. But how much can I really credit that? Because ultimately this patch, I've had to do something that I didn't have to do before. I had to lower the texture quality from the highest, the high res texture pack, down to high. It made a massive difference in the VRAM usage of the game. And before I did that, there was those weird texture pop-ins occurring. The low poly monsters and low poly NPCs and stuff. I was experiencing that on my rig in Title Update 2. That's crazy. They would load in, then deload, then reload. It was terrible. Once I put the texture quality to high instead of highest, my issues completely evaporated. I've seen a post on Reddit talking about this, that people are struggling with crashes in Title Update 2, and basically was pointing the finger at that high-res texture pack. Those that have reported turning it off have stated that the crashes have stopped and the performance is a lot better. Even though their rigs should be able to handle the high-res texture pack, like my own, turning it off was a big problem solver. So if you guys are having issues still, maybe you're running that, consider it. So, just my own experience won't do the job here. We decided to ask you guys and made a community post with a little poll. We asked a very simple question. PC players, is your performance better, worse, or have you experienced no real change in Title Update 2? We've had 4,500 votes, and in that vote, overall, 56% have had better performance. 38% have claimed that they've not seen any real change, and 6% have stated that they've got worse performance. A lot of comments were on that post talking about how, well, as a console player, I've experienced no issues from the start of Wilds. We've just not had the same experience that PC players have. It's funny, if you were to look at, say, the PlayStation reviews for the game this whole time, it's been overwhelmingly positive compared to the Steam one. So performance is obviously a major issue for the reviews of this game. This response is a very positive one, that their experience is, for the most people, better. Some comments said that, they've not really felt better performance, but they've not had issue. Personally, I take issue with that because if you played that May update, you definitely had issues, man. Unless in the first day since they posted the sort of fix that you can manually do yourself, then yeah, you wouldn't have had issues. So at least for our community, this has been a very positive update for performance. Looking at the top post in the last 24 hours on the Monster Hunter Wilds Reddit, it's this. A mini review of the title update, which is 10 out of 10. Thrilled by the difficulty of the game, and a lot of positive comments with that experience. So people are really happy with title update 2. That's great. But it doesn't really discuss performance. In fact, I scrolled through both the regular Monster Hunter Reddit and the Monster Hunter Wilds Reddit and couldn't find anything about it until I searched specifically about it and got very low voted posts, but with a little bit of engagement, the most I could find. The most popular post of that nature was this one. I can't play the game anymore, performance has become awful. They claim to have turned off all mods basically, but state that the game has become unplayable, especially when fighting Lagiacrus. Their frame rate drops to 70 with frame generation on, which is unplayable to them. Obviously, they got a little bit roasted for claiming that 70 FPS is unplayable. I believe that's higher than you can get on a console. But to be fair, if they have a really good rig, they should expect higher FPS. So yeah, I'm not sure how serious we can take that one. Again, there were posts talking about the high res texture pack and how if you turn that off, it should make a major difference in your performance. That has been true for me, by the way. And I found a couple posts talking about playing on a laptop and being unable to play the game even with a stable 25 FPS. So referring back to that 6% of players that responded to our poll, saying that, it's been worse for them, there's at least some errors and issues with the patch for some people. So for the majority of the people, Title Update 2 has been a big improvement to performance. Let's now look at the review stats on Steam after Title Update 2 and see how that's been reflected in that negative review situation. Unfortunately, it only updates every week, but thankfully that's happened as of today as I make this video. If you look at the graph, you can see how the initial reviews for the game were, massive at the beginning, right? Obviously, as people start to get to play the game. And then as things calm down a little bit, we get into the second week of the game, the reviews have halved or even 1/3 of that amount. But you can see that the difference between positive and negative is big, still very much positive. And again, the third week, and again, the fourth week, and again, the fifth week, and again, the sixth week. Then we get into the, okay, a lot less reviews are happening now, where you can barely see any of these boxes. And even then, it's still more positive than negative, and then it just sort of flatlines. It wasn't until the 23rd of May, and we get towards that May update, that suddenly that negative score starts to completely outright take over the positive, and it gets worse week over week since the May update. As we get into June, there was 2,000 negative reviews compared to 350 positive, and it only got worse week over week from there. This week then, we've had so much less reviews compared to that big review bombed talk, but it's still mostly negative. That only lets us see some of the title update changes though, because again, this looks at a week and it's only been a couple days since this. So some reviews posted today. The game is fun, but the optimization is bad. A review that begins talking about aspects of the game and how they feel about it, but then goes on to talk about performance for the rest of it is a negative review. Another negative review says the game is fantastic and it's been a great improvement of quality from the prior games. Another positive review was talking about the recent update and how Lagiacrus is one of the best monster fights they've ever made. And they strongly recommend the game if you can get 60 FPS, which right now is obviously a big if. Then as I scroll more negative reviews from today, it's all about performance. So this brings us to the last topic here. This article posted by WCCF Tech on the 1st of July, the day after Title Update 2 released. People were very excited by this because they were claiming that this was their big plans to optimize the game in the future. Whereas some people were saying, I thought this was talking about what they did so far and the current state of optimization, how they feel about how they've optimized the game currently. So what we're going to do is this crazy concept where I'm going to look at it and I'm just going to read it, and I guess I'll take that information in. The title of this post is The Wilds devs are going to host optimization talk this month, with a new patch addressing the PC stability and performance issues announced. Apparently some of the team are going to host a talk on July 24th, so later this month, to talk about the challenges of optimizing the latest entry in the series, so Wilds, and how the team reportedly managed to maintain stable operation while realizing the game's core features. As this article says, a statement many will find inevitably funny at the very least, considering how the game doesn't run well, which is fair comment. The article references the title update 2 with the VRAM improvements, but how overall optimization still needs improvements. But that's it. That's all this article actually says, guys. On the 24th of July, they're going to talk about the performance, but also what the challenges of optimizing this game actually are. This all comes from the CEDC official website, which is posted in a completely different language, so I'm relying on Google Translate. This is where it looks a lot more dire. The title here is Making Monster Hunter Wilds Run Smoothly, all about performance adjustments. It explains that in this talk, they're going to be talking about the performance tuning of Wilds, what goals they set, what measures they took, with examples, stating that in recent games, stable operation, high frame rates are more strongly required. But to achieve this, they have to approach it from different angles. Wilds is no exception, and it's been a thorny path. And how often quality and performance are actually opposed, and how they try to walk the line between that. They're going to explain their perspectives on CPU load, GPU load, and memory usage. And they want to raise awareness of performance and how it actually works and the challenges of it through the industry, in the hopes that that helps others. However, sometime after working on this video, they've cancelled it. It now states in red above the title, lecture cancelled. So for whatever reason it's been pulled, obviously we could make some logical, reasonable speculation here that it's a topic that is a hot topic right now. It's the biggest point of negative feedback that the game currently has, and they're doing a lecture about the kind of things they've done to successfully do something that is currently being very criticized. That is a reasonable assumption to make as to why they may have pulled this, especially after people started to acknowledge that it was happening, talking about it, and maybe saying things about it that weren't so positive. I do think we don't understand the ins and outs of how difficult something like this actually is, and I do think it could have been a useful, interesting talk. But I think the context of what's going on with Wilds right now just means it's definitely not the right time. So maybe it was for the best, but it's a shame. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this talk about performance. My experience is that it's been a lot better in Title Update 2, though I had to take off the high res texture pack thing. That seemed to be a solve for a lot of people. Overall, our audience has been very positive about the update and their performance has been much better. Though for a good chunk, it hasn't really changed, and a smaller group has experienced some more issues. The Reddit response has been very positive to Title Update 2 as the content introduced has been great, but performance remains a hot topic and a very important thing for them to still address and improve on. Right now, the Steam reviews still reflect that. Even the positive talks about the game and Title Update 2 still mention how performance is a big concern. We'll see how things develop, but I am hoping in that August update that's coming, we see a big improvement there. Or at very least, not like the May update, a massive step backwards. But it has been a big relief to me in Title Update 2 that things have actually become much better in my experience. And I'm hopeful for Title Update 3 for further improvements. Let us know your thoughts on all of it though, guys. But until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.